Hi, I'm Artie Nimco. We hear lots of praising of education from people, from bumper stickers, teachers union ads. Harvard President Derek Bach said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's been duplicated on a zillion bumper stickers and ads. If your child can read this, thank a teacher. I've seen that on teachers union bumper stickers. So as I searched through compendia of quotations on education, I found myself feeling that you might benefit more from considering quotes that don't quite put education on the pedestal that the education enterprise itself has put itself on. So I'm offering a total of 7 quotes, and for each I'm then going to offer a comment, usually a dissenting one, because I do believe that education, at its best, encourages considering multiple perspectives rather than for us to goose-step uncritically to the beat of the orthodox drum. All right, first a couple of quotes about education as it should be. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically." Oh, if that was only I don't know about the intent or certainly the outcome of education. I've seen too much goose-stepping to the orthodoxy of the day, the zeitgeist of the era, rather than critically thinking. We tend to have our views that are fit on a soundbite, on a placard, a protest placard, or a bumper sticker. There really are multiple perspectives on many, many, many issues that are at least worthy of thoughtful consideration. And I just worry. I don't know if it's the kids are more easily just looking for a quick answer, or the educators are actually such true believers in the current zeitgeist that they want to turn kids into activists of a certain type. The second quote about education as it should be is from Aristotle. "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." Exactly. It's the same as the corollary of the previous one. So when somebody, at least somebody of reasonable intelligence, says something, and maybe you viscerally react against it, but it really is worth entertaining the thought, is thinking about it, asking a question, before you immediately reject it and resort to the 3 C's that tend to dominate today: censure, censor, and cancel. Now 5 quotes that look at education through a jaundiced eye. And I start with one from no less august than Albert Einstein. He wrote, "It is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education." Well, I think that actually there is a fair amount of curiosity building in some education. These group projects make one curious, but the dissenting point is, you set kids loose on a project, but they don't have the foundational knowledge about math and the various hierarchical skills that are needed to really analyze things, or the critical thinking skills, or the writing skills, or whatever. And they have very little knowledge base, and yet they're said, go solve this problem. I think there needs to be a real primacy, even if it's less interesting, a primacy on really teaching good critical reading of reading and debating, etc., and a knowledge base about whether it be science or math or history or politics, and then you can set them off for a small percentage of the time to apply it. Okay, the next quote. This one comes from Robert Kiyosaki. He's the guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. "Academic qualifications are important, and so is financial education. Schools are forgetting one of them, obviously, the financial education. It is rather hubristic of education to charge as much as they want, not only for college, which can cost just an insurmountable amount of money, but even if you don't want to send your kids to the public schools, private school tuition is also frighteningly high. It can be 30, 40, 50,000 a year per child. But they don't deign to educate kids on financial literacy, how to make a living, etc. That somehow is sullying of them, rather hypocritical, I would say. The next quote comes from Ray Bradbury, the famous science fiction writer. He said, "I spent 3 days a week for 10 years educating myself in the public library, and it's better than college. People should educate themselves. You can get a complete education for no money. At the end of 10 years, I had read every book in the library, and I had written 1,000 stories." Well, my dissent here is not everybody's Ray Bradbury. And also, there was no curation. 10 years of reading everything in the library, when no doubt a lot of it was redundant. They could have learned more in the real world. There's a need for teachers to do curation, to structure learning. And even if you are a brilliant guy like Ray Bradbury, and most people by definition are not brilliant. Next. This comes from the famous humorist of the mid-20th century, Will Rogers. Education spoils you for actual work. The more you know, the more you think someone owes you a living. And that's true because it redounds to one word, externalities. The more educated you are, the more you realize that your self-efficacy is affected by racism, sexism, classism, capitalism, etc. And therefore, that can be too convenient an excuse to say, the government should support me because we live in this horrible society. Well, those factors, to some extent, depending upon who you are, and can to be some extent true, but I think those are dwarfed by individual initiative. And I'm perhaps overgeneralizing from my dad and the many other Holocaust survivors I know, but my dad never got a penny from anybody. When he came to this country after the Holocaust without a penny to his name, no money, no English, no nothing, and the only job he could get was as a factory worker, 10 hours a day. But he took it, and which of course reinforced his own work ethic. And he didn't spend it. We lived in a horrible apartment, a tenement apartment in the Bronx. And he didn't buy a car because he knew if he bought a car, he would be stuck in he had to save money in order to afford his own business, which would be the only way that he could get out of minimum wage work. And he did, and we never got rich. We lived in the bottom half of a duplex in Flushing, but we did live a middle-class lifestyle. And I can't say for sure, but I would bet that if my father learned about all these externalities, and it was reinforced about the Holocaust, the horrible anti-Semitism, blah, 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 it could have made him more inert and less likely to be self-efficacious and be the great role model for me and my sister that he was. And finally, and this final quote, dovetails off the last, and I couldn't agree more. I agree with it so much that I have a plaque of it sitting on the desk beside me. It was said by former President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful people with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. In any event, I hope that's good food for thought. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up, accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments, and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.